You're listening to Jack Barksdale's Roots Revival.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Jack Barksdale.
Hey everybody, it's Jack Barksdale here, and welcome to another episode of Jack Barksdale's Roots Revival. Today I'm here with my mama, Clara Barksdale over here.
Hello.
And today we're going to be talking about our favorite songwriters, who they are, and why. So let's just get right to it. Mama, what are your favorite songwriters?
Well, I find that the music that you are most connected with is the music from your teen years.
Which I have not gotten to yet.
Granted. But you're also an anomaly, so there's that. But my favorite songwriters still come from the people that I listened to when I was a teenager. Number one, and that is Lucinda Williams. Love Lucinda Williams still. In fact, I've been listening to her for decades now, and she just had a new album come out, and it's amazing.
Yeah, that one's really good.
The Big Black Train, I always get it wrong. Is that right? Big Black Train. I really enjoyed that single, but the whole album is really good, and it has a nice mix of, I find it is a nice mix of all her styles in writing and in music, which is very cool. But she was really influential. I don't write songs, but I write. And she was really influential to me in how I write, just by the way that her songwriting was. It influenced how I put words together, and kind of the cadence of how I write was influenced by her songwriting, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So, Jack, who's your favorite?
Pretty much if you ever seen an interview or the first episode of the show, you'll know that Townes is pretty much my favorite.
Right.
Townes Van Zandt is definitely at the top.
Right. And I would say
he's one of my all-time favorites.
He's one of those that is a favorite and also influential.
Yeah, very influential.
On how you write.
Yeah, and also a lot of my melodies, too.
Right.
I use a lot of his minor key stuff.
Right.
Yeah, and so Townes, I really like how he writes, well, not all of his songs, but a lot of his songs, especially the early songs, are a lot like poems.
Right.
And I really like that. And we were kind of talking about this earlier today, about how I like a lot of songs that, like if you took all the music away and just had it on a sheet, you might think it's a poem.
Right.
But you tend to like more songs.
I do. I tend to like what I think of as more like prose type songs, where they are maybe telling a story, it just less lyrical. Granted that they are lyrics, but less lyrical. For instance, I really enjoy in that Townes Van Zandt sphere how Guy Clark writes songs.
Yeah.
And I think part of why
a lot of the storytelling.
Yes. And just the words that he uses and the way that he lays it out, kind of maybe a little more sparsely than Townes does, that appeals to me.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, another one of my favorite songwriters, and we touched on this just a little bit on the last podcast, is Nancy Griffith.
Yeah.
And all these years, and she's probably my biggest influence on how I write, because I just loved her songs and the way that she wrote them and the way that she presented them, and the way the words flowed together. And she would say these things that were just so profound, and just her very casual delivery almost of it.
I like how Iris DeMent does that a lot.
Right.
Yeah, like there's this really cool song that she has, Easy's Getting Harder Every Day.
Yes.
I love that song. It's a really good song.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she kind of does that a lot.
Right. But the crazy thing with Nancy Griffith that we learned just a few years ago, 2 years ago, a year ago was that I was looking at YouTube videos of her singing, and she was doing Tecumseh Valley, performing Tecumseh Valley, and had Towns on the show with her.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's introducing Towns and saying, without Towns Van Zandt, there would be no Nancy Griffith. So it's been this really cool circle that I never knew that Towns was one of my favorite songwriters growing up. But he influenced Nancy Griffith, who was so influential to how I write. So it's one of those cool circles of finding people that you like how they write, and then see who they like how other people write, who they look up to, who influenced them.
Yeah, I had because you're my mom.
Right.
But I went through a really hardcore Johnny Cash phase.
Right. Yes. Very lengthy.
Yeah, lengthy. I bought a ton of albums.
So many.
So many records. I think I have about 50.
There are a lot of them.
So, and then I've got a bunch of posters too in my room.
A whole wall.
Yeah. And then I started finding out that Johnny Cash's influence was like the Carter family and that.
Right.
And so then I started looking back at the Carter family and Jimmy Rogers and Woody Guthrie.
Right.
And I started getting into all that. And then my dad,
Right. I know him.
yeah. He loves Nirvana.
Right.
And Nirvana he does love Nirvana. Yeah. And they do that version of Where Did You Sleep Last Night?
Right.
Which a lot of people know by Leadbelly.
Right.
Although Leadbelly didn't write it, he did. A lot of people know him for that song.
They associate the song with him.
So, Nirvana talks about Leadbelly in that live recording, and so I went back and looked up Leadbelly, and that's how I got into the blues. I really love how strings like that.
I do too, and I find that we've gotten a little off topic of the songwriters.
Yeah,
but I find that is one of the key things in songwriters, is because how they write a song is about their life experience, but it's also about who influenced them and who they listen to and what writers they look up to. And it's always so interesting to talk to songwriters and see who they recommend. Contemporary songwriters like Chuck Cannon, who writes amazing, beautiful songs, and who writes a lot of popular songs as well. And asking him, who should we listen to? And I forget, he told you to read Hank Williams' lyrics. And was he the one that recommended Leonard Cohen as well?
I think
it was.
I think he might have. I don't remember that, but
yeah, I think yes, it was. He did. We talked about Leonard Cohen. You may not have been out there with us, but we did talk about Leonard Cohen.
And since I've gone down a Leonard Cohen,
you have. I know, definitely.
Yeah, Leonard Cohen is definitely one on the top of my list.
Right.
And none of these are in a particular order because it's so hard to pick an order.
Right. You are very resistant to ordering and ranking songwriters, which I really appreciate too.
It's their life work. How would it feel to be ranked?
Right. And
it's your life work.
And it's a subjective thing. There's no criteria that you can just list and say, okay.
And it's also a lot of opinions too, just personal opinions.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So, but Leonard Cohen, that
is on your list.
That would be one of my favorites because I just love, again, how he turns it into almost like a poem, because he wrote poetry,
right?
I believe,
which I love.
Yeah, Songs of Leonard Cohen.
Right.
The first single for that was a song called Suzanne, which apparently was a poem he published as a poem before he ended up turning it into a song. And I think he said Judy Collins recorded it before he ended up doing something with it, which I thought was kind of cool.
That is very cool.
So I think it was the same year he released it.
That's very cool.
So,
well, okay, so let's wrap this back around, because as the same with Towns, I suspect that we could do many volumes on our favorite songwriters.
Oh yeah.
So, but let's try to give me your favorite 5, and I'll count them off for you.
Okay.
And not ranking them.
Yeah.
Just your favorite 5.
So I would say probably Towns, Guy Clark, John Hartford. Love John Hartford's writing. Again, he does that thing where he turns it into a poem a lot.
Right.
It sounds a lot like a poem. But then he also does like a lot of songs that are just good to sing along to and dance to.
For
for
instance, Gentle on My Mind is
that's
his
a beautiful
most
song.
famous song, I would say.
It's a beautiful song, but then he has ones like The Girl I Left Behind Me.
Right.
And yeah. But
Okay, so that's 3.
Yeah, that's 3. And then so Towns, Guy, John Hartford, and
I would say John Prine is probably on your list.
John Prine is definitely
of your top 5.
Yeah, I love John Prine, and it's so sad too.
Right.
Yeah,
I know.
And who is it? I know it.
Is Leonard Cohen in your top 5? Or is he
yes,
too new?
yes. Leonard Cohen is definitely in there. I don't know how I forgot Leonard Cohen.
Okay.
So yeah,
So
Towns, Leonard Cohen, John Hartford, John Prine, Guy Clark. Those are my top 5.
Those are your top 5. So I would go with Nancy Griffith, Lucinda Williams, Kevin Welch, who is another one of those from just my teen years where he had an album that came out that just resonated with me the way that he wrote.
Yeah.
Guy Clark. And then I'm probably going to put Bruce Robinson as my 5th.
Yeah.
I just love the way Bruce writes songs. Angry All the Time is heartbreakingly beautiful and not as well known as Traveling Soldier, but I would say just as
totally forgot about that one. He has so many hits.
Just as well written as Traveling Soldier, if not better. It's really one of my favorite. But then he has volumes more and I really like the way that he delivers, and I feel like he's in that line of Guy Clark type writers.
Oh yeah,
the way that he puts the words together and delivers a song.
Yeah, I just love his writing.
I do too.
Yeah. And then when he gets Kelly to harmonize.
Oh man, right? Yes. Again, we won't talk about how many decades I've listened to Kelly Willis. She's been my favorite.
I think you said since 8th grade, right?
I think so, yeah. And again, we're not going to talk about how many years ago that was. So, but that would be my 5, with I guess Guy Clark being our. But then when I started trying to make the list, it got very unwieldy. Like I had Chris Christopherson, I had Rodney Crowell, who I really love, Tom Petty.
Yeah,
I love Tom Petty, and I feel like it's easy to, in the type of music that we tend to gravitate toward. Sometimes we forget about how powerful of a songwriter he could be.
Oh yeah, Tom Petty is great.
So good.
And you know one that you don't think about a lot is Paul Simon. He's a great songwriter.
I haven't ever listened to a lot of Paul Simon.
Listen to his so if you go to Spotify and look up Paul Simon, go all the way down to the bottom of the album section.
Right.
And that first album, the earliest one there, it has these great songs on it. I think a lot of them he did with his band Simon and Garfunkel.
Okay.
But there are some really great songs on there.
Well, and then I'm going to throw out a couple of Texas ones that we didn't really talk about, and I will probably have to get to some of these guys in volume 2 of our favorite songwriters. But Lyle Lovett. I love how Lyle Lovett writes songs.
LA County. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And Robert Earl Keen,
who
who writes amazing
Yeah.
songs.
Sing One for Sister. That's a great song.
Yes, and the road goes on forever.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's so many really cool songs.
Yeah.
We could do volumes to just amazing Texas songwriters.
Yeah.
As well. But yeah, those are some of my favorites.
And one that I think gets forgotten a lot when you're going down like the favorite songwriters thing is Woody Guthrie.
This is true. Yeah.
Woody Guthrie was a prolific just artist.
Yeah,
in general.
he was.
He had such a creative mind. He was such a creator.
And it's part of, I don't know, I wonder if his being prolific had unintentionally that he had so few years really to create before he was unable to, that he just got a lifetime in those years that he had. That was a cool thing.
How old was he when he died?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but he Huntington's disease, the effects of it started early in his adult life, I believe. And we should remember this because we went to the
Woody Guthrie Center in Tulsa, Oklahoma,
which has his artwork and his poetry.
But I haven't been there in like 4 years, so I don't remember.
Man, even his to-do list were creative.
Oh yeah, it was like a read the radio.
He was 55 years old when he died.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But yeah, his
thanks, Dad, for looking that up for us.
Yes, thank you. His New Year's Eve resolution or New Year's resolutions list was it was one of the most creative and authentic pieces of writing. It was really I don't know, I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. That whole Woody Guthrie Center.
Yes.
They have so many different paintings and songs.
And it does a really good job of presenting where he was historically, how like the age that he lived in and how that influenced his songwriting.
Yeah, like the Dust Bowl. The Great Depression.
Right. The World War II.
Yeah.
Those type of things were so influential to him. Mm-hmm. And you're right. He does get overlooked, I feel like, a lot.
As a songwriter.
Yes.
Well, I feel like it's so obvious that it gets overlooked sometimes.
This is true.
But also, sometimes I feel like when people are really prolific writers, they kind of lose the specialness of the song because there's so many of them.
Bob Dylan. Are we talking about Bob Dylan?
No.
Oh. But he has so many songs.
Yeah. I'm not so sure that he loses that. But I was saying Woody Guthrie always, no matter how many songs he had, every one was really, it meant something. Right. It wasn't just a song because, like, oh, I haven't written a song in a while, I need to write a song.
Fill out the album.
Yeah.
Right.
It was like, he wrote it for something, like Deportee.
Right.
He wrote that because he saw in the newspaper that a plane had crashed that was deporting some immigrants.
Right.
That had some immigrants on board. And in the newspaper article, the headline was however many people dead and however many deportees dead. Right. And they didn't even call the deportees people. Right. They didn't even call them people. Right. And so he wrote the song Deportee about that. Right. So I just think that, and there's so many things. You just keep going on and on about this.
Well, and
you could do a whole episode on just one person. That's why it's so hard to do this.
I know, and that's what we're gonna wrap this up, but
Yeah.
isn't that the cool thing about
Yeah.
songwriters and why this discussion? But that's one of those cool things to kind of maybe leave it thinking about is you're talking about a song that Woody Guthrie wrote how many decades ago?
Oh, yeah.
And it's still such a relevant and meaningful song to you who was born years after Woody Guthrie had died. And that's one of those cool things about songwriters is their ability to keep influencing people even after they've gone on. And we've seen that with John Prine. As John Prine died recently, and all of the people who were influenced by him, and so very obvious that his legacy will live on.
And the crazy thing about it is when I heard that John Prine had died, my heart just dropped.
Right.
Like, it was terrible. It was this terrible feeling. And I had never met John Prine.
Right.
I had just heard his songs.
But that's the power of a songwriter.
That's the power of songs and songwriting and music in general. So I just think that's awesome. And thanks for talking with me, Mama.
Oh, man.
This is fun.
This was so much fun.
Yeah. So thank y'all for tuning in to Jack Barksdale's Roots Revival, and hope to see you soon.